Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Doctor Who in Review with Man Bites Media and Diversely Geek. I'm Joe with Diversely Geek, and joining us today we have the lovelies.
Nisha M., your geek mom.
And Lewis from Man Bites Media.
Yay!
Yeah, and tonight's going to be something a little bit different, bringing you a bit of a in-depth perspective into who we are. And what got us into Doctor Who, basically. I am the newest, obviously, so I can be saved for last, I guess. It'll be a short story.
Are we going from oldest to newest then?
I mean, that might be the best way to do this.
Yeah. So, Nisha?
Not giving away age. Don't worry. I mean, you're going to give away your age when you say how long you've been watching it, but
That's Lewis getting back at me because I've been bugging him about his age.
Yeah.
Not a millennial anymore. He's like, what?
Just like that. Rick James style. What?
Oh, Lord. Yes, I think I have announced it throughout the universe what my age is, so I'm not too worried about it at this point because the world knows I'm in my 50s. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have been watching Doctor Who since I was 13-ish. I haven't really been able to pinpoint 100% because I have to look back at the history of when PBS first started airing Pertwee, which is the third Doctor. I do know that I was already in middle school at the time, or had just started. Well, I was in middle school from 11, so yes. And so it was about 13. I think it's been a good 37, 38 years at this point. Yeah.
Wow. That's intense. I mean, yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, I mean, going back, don't worry, we're not going to do the numbers, so no one has time to really go through and count numbers. But if we're talking about, the time, the era that you were introduced to Doctor Who and how you got into it, it's very reflective of the times. I know that you have talked about it a bit over different shows that we've actually had. But if we talk about how do I say this? The platform in which you were introduced, I know that had to do largely in part with PBS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not largely in part. It had everything to do with PBS. So because I'm from New York and I was from a very strong metropolitan core of New York, being from Queens, New York itself, I've reflected on this quite a bit. I was really lucky in terms of the type of programming that we had access to. When you can liken it to BBC America coming to fruition, right? And when you guys were growing up, correct? And how you were able to start seeing the Doctor and BBC America. For us, PBS kind of had this arrangement where they were able to bring across Masterpiece Theatre and what we know now as BBC.
Masterpiece Theatre was amazing, by the way. That was definitely, it was a game changer. I'm glad you brought that one up. Yeah.
I think actually it's something which we should always talk about and that we should really do some reflection on, because I still watch Masterpiece Theatre to this day. What they bring in terms of programming, are you kidding me?
Phenomenal. And you could see kind of the inspiration of where BBC came from and how it came to be, and the programming that they have on BBC. You could see that it came from there.
Yeah, I was a huge Benny Hill fan. I was a huge The Store. I mean, just everything you can think of. So, Mr. Bean. I mean, I watched those, and back in the day, when you were looking at that, or Monty Python and Benny Hill, which is this wonderful, raucous raw humor, but then we're treated to, I was already ingratiated to the programming, right? So I was ready and willing to be able to listen to something else. Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day I turned on, because I was already that sci-fi nerd. So always looking for something along those lines. And, they're heralding this new character and this new show coming. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to turn it on and leave it and watch it and see what happens. And I was treated to the very first episode where Pertwee with the regeneration, and where he's banished to, to Earth. And now we are introduced to the unit, and all of this. And my first introduction to the Doctor is the Doctor who is grounded and has to exist as the Doctor, but as, part of humanity. So that, for me, I think was probably a great way for me to be able to learn who the Doctor was, and probably the history of the Doctor to some extent. I just was extremely excited to be able to have the unit and I have to go back and look back at my characters now, you guys. I didn't have enough time to look it up, but the science officer who the Doctor was working with, if you remember.
I don't remember the name.
Oh my goodness.
But I mean, yeah, I get it. I know who you're talking about. I'm pretty sure the fans that have seen those episodes, they know exactly who you're talking about. They're like they're probably screaming at their radio right now the name of the character, but
Okay, yeah, I'll get it. I'm being old now. Oh my God. So I was extremely excited because we were being treated to these female science officers, were being treated to the pure science of sci-fi. And so for me, it was never an issue to take out the overwhelming alien and technology side of it and just to delve into the science of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I'm perfectly happy with the 13th Doctor as it is right now, because I get it. The Doctor goes through those type of cycles, so I had no issue with it whatsoever. So I just thought it was a fascinating idea, especially when he was in his coma in the beginning. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes. Yeah,
I thought that was fascinating, and how how when
I just rewatched it, so it's all fresh in my mind.
Oh, you remember when he woke up?
Yes.
Yeah,
that was like it was one of those revelations in Doctor Who. It was like, wow, yes, that was, yeah. It was
yeah.
good.
I really love that. I loved it a lot. And I know that Joe probably hasn't had that much historical precedence to know. But that was the Spearhead from Space. And he was known as a scientific advisor, remember?
Yep.
To UNIT. And we are talking about the characters, and let me get them for you. So that's where I started out. We weren't given routine showings, but at a certain point I remember that there was at least some level of episodic, so we could keep following the story.
Yeah.
So it really was like that, and MASH at the time gave me a really strong feel for the type of science that I kind of wanted to go towards.
I completely get you. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
MASH was it was one of those shows that I never got into it, but I see the influence that it had, and I could see why people enjoyed it. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Love it. If you got into it now, if you watched it now, you would love it. Actually, it's really interesting that a lot of millennials are actually getting into it. because of like either parents that grew up with it, grandparents that grew up with it, and then just seeing reruns all the time. It's an amazing show.
But it's funny because I actually got one of the nicknames that one of my teachers gave me was Radar, and I was like,
oh.
Got it. It was Liz Shaw. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
Yep, scientist Liz Shaw. Oh my God, what a character. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, I got that nickname from the teacher, and I never had a connection to it. I was like, huh? I was like, what? What is this? But anyways, yeah. I'm sorry, Nisha. Go ahead.
No. Because this is where I also get introduced to Sarah Jane. So when you're looking at the you're getting Liz Shaw, then you're getting Katie Manning as Jo Grant, who admittedly for me was not my favorite companion at all, but I also liked Jo. And then, oh my God, hello, I get Sarah Jane. I mean, come on, if you're going to start Doctor Who,
that's the best way to start.
That's the way to start, man. You get Sarah Jane and Liz. So I'm just saying. So
yeah, that definitely is a nice cornerstone.
Absolutely, because you have these two very, very strong female protagonists, or protagonists in general, who are extremely intelligent and wisecracky, but scientifically astute and very vast thinking, who could keep up with the speed of the Doctor's brain, because Pertwee's brain speed was pretty fast. He was a very fast-speaking Doctor. Like, he was the person who would do this, if you've ever watched me. Like, you guys don't see me moving my hands, but he would do that, and you'd know that the thoughts were flying around in the back of his head. So
yeah, go ahead. Which you could see that in 13 a lot. You could see the influence of that, because she does that all the time, too. Fantastic.
And so what about you, Lewis? How did you come about Doctor Who?
So I have a very interesting way that I started watching Doctor Who. It was actually in 2006. I got introduced to it, and I was trying to get into new shows and new series, right? So I never had BBC America because it just was never an option. And PBS in Miami never really showed. Well, I was never around when it showed Doctor Who as a child. I've always heard of it. It was always in the zeitgeist, and I've never had an opportunity to watch it until 2006, that I went to the library, the public library, and started renting a bunch of TV shows and movies and stuff like that. And I had a librarian in particular that she was very fond of my choice in movies. So she started recommending movies to me and shows. She recommended Firefly. I finished watching Firefly, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. Thank you so much for introducing this to me. And then she goes, I got a better one. I'm going to one-up you on that. And she hands me the first season of Modern Who. And she goes, watch this. And I've been hooked ever since. From that episode that got me 100% hooked. And you want to talk about binge watching? I binge watched that whole season in a day and a half because of what do you call it, the Empty Child. As soon as I got the Empty Child, I was done. That's it. There was no letting go of that show.
Mm-hmm.
It just, and ever since then, I've been watching it religiously. Every season, every episode, I have not let go. And any person that ever asked me, what show should I watch? First thing I say is Doctor Who, because of, I know how it is. The feeling of giving that to somebody and having them watch it and get hooked on it is the most amazing feeling. Now it's been a family. It's literally a family movement that I've created. I had my stepdaughter watches it religiously now. My ex-wife even still religiously watches it and reaches out to me every time she sees an episode that is just fantastic. And she's like, oh my God. And she hates sci-fi. Absolutely hates sci-fi.
Why? How can anybody hate sci-fi? Sorry.
I know, but she Doctor Who is one of her things, and same thing with a couple other friends of mine that I've known, and they just completely love it. It's something so different. It meshes up real life. It meshes up real life situations. It changes the dynamic in so many different ways. It's not Star Wars. It's not Star Trek. It's its own monster. It's its own thing, and it just kind of captures so many different avenues, so many different demographics, so many different perspectives on life, and that's what makes Doctor Who, I think.
But you started with the reboot, with the
Yes.
new generation of Who.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the fourth, but mind you, the fourth Doctor and all this stuff, when I went back, I had to buy the DVDs to get it. So I started getting like, I'm sorry guys, but I bought bootlegs of it because I couldn't afford to buy the DVDs and I didn't know if I would enjoy it. So I bought bootlegs of it. Started watching those, and I got from the fourth Doctor on. I wasn't able to watch the first three Doctors until I got BritBox recently, and I binged that in like less than a week and a half. Those first three Doctors.
It's pretty amazing how quickly the adventures of the first Doctor pretty much draw you in.
Oh yeah. From episode 1.
Never would you think that something from the 60s that was that cheesy could ever capture.
Well, I grew up watching The Twilight Zone and all that, so
that's probably what it was. Yeah.
That was never far-fetched for me, and I was always there for those Twilight Zone marathons and all that stuff, so it was like, I'm golden with old cheesy movies and shows. I'm okay with it as long as you have a good plot, which Doctor Who never ceases to amaze what they put in there. It's all about plot. It's all about what drives the characters, what drives the stories, and it's something revolutionary each episode. And each episode gets better and better, and it's 53 plus years, 54 years now, and it's still going, and it's still like amazing. It's incredible. It really is.
So since then you've been hooked then?
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Well, hey, we're doing the show.
I know, that's true. Well, I know for you, it wasn't always accessible throughout the years.
No,
so
it wasn't.
Growing up, you started with PBS and the Third Doctor, and then over time, I'm sure, what was it, like bits and pieces, and then.
No, I got all the way to Sylvester McCoy. Yeah, bits and pieces, because they didn't always keep it airing regularly. That was always a problem. But because, again, we were in New York, we had great access, much better than we could have ever had if, say, we had been in a different part of the country, because you had a more international, global demographic, multicultural. So we had access to a lot more than most people would have had. So, but I as strange as it sounds, I actually didn't go out of my way to look for it. I just, made sure I kept up with it.
And then, what about in the reboot era? I know that was a little bit different as well, because in the reboot, it was also aired differently in the U.S. As it wasn't, it wasn't certain that it would succeed, right, in America, so it was aired a little bit differently. So when did you get into the reboot? Did you watch it when it came out? Did you wait a while, watch bits and pieces?
Are you asking me, or are you asking
you?
Well, how about yourself?
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
You know how you said that you had generations behind you watching? I would say very much so. So I was certainly, because life was what it was at the time, and the reboot started back in 2005, right? 2005, I think 2005. Is when.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wow, 14 years ago. Can you think about that?
Yes.
It's been a crazy 14 years, let me tell you.
Yeah, it has been, hasn't it? I watched all the way to McCoy, and then didn't really like the movie, so the movie for me wasn't, unfortunately, didn't snap me back in.
The 96?
But so I'm trying to show you, Jyoti, there was a good span of time.
I know, yeah.
So when I don't know how I realized that was the Doctor Who reboot. And I
think it took some time because
yeah.
in the airing it wasn't consistent. BBC America wasn't accessible until a certain time, and then PBS wasn't really airing it. So the airing in the US became a little bit inconsistent with at least, I mean, like we've been talking geographically, demographically, it wasn't the same everywhere. Sorry about that. So I think it really came about when there was like a partnership, or maybe when Sci-Fi really started to promote it as well, because at some point I believe.
Well, they were off the air for 16 years.
Did Sci-Fi really promote it? Really? I don't remember that at all.
What?
That
Sci-Fi promoted it.
Well, there was no Sci-Fi at the time.
No, it was they did. It was
later on they promoted it.
Yeah, it was later on more so around when I started watching it. Right. And promoting it in the way of like Sci-Fi and BBC America were owned by the same ultimately the same company. And that's when it started to kind of cross marketing happened. And I think that's where you saw the large spark in the US, because Sci-Fi is a huge channel in the US, and it only was growing and growing and growing in the 2000s. And so by 2010, with the Matt Smith era, it blew up in the US because you had
definitely see that, 100%.
Yeah, because you had it everywhere. You had it readily available at the fingertips. Literally, Sci-Fi, BBC America, they were a joint, it was a joint, like I said, cross-marketing. And I know that because that's when I joined in.
And the Hot Topic era.
Yeah. But the thing is, it really was because it was accessible.
Yeah.
And it was because they were
being
streaming
aired on BBC One at the time.
Well, we don't have BBC One in America.
Right, so, I'm just saying that's what it was aired on, so.
Yeah, so I remember, the thing is, for me, I remember you and Dad watching, random things on the TV.
Well, we were nerds.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say
nerds.
Random, like, I wouldn't always know what I was watching, but I do remember at some point, I saw my first Doctor Who episode. And it was not a pleasant experience. So we all choose to collectively forget as a fandom.
Forget it, and believe it or not, they're bringing that back. They're rebooting that episode. Yep.
I hope not.
They are.
Anyway, the episode I'm referring to is the one with Moaning Myrtle and the giant sidewalk blob thing and then she becomes, I don't know, she's in love with a slab of concrete or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah.
Imagine that as your first episode.
Yeah, I could see that.
You wouldn't watch it, by the way. I had to drag her kicking and screaming.
No, it really wasn't that. It was just, that was my first episode, so I was like, okay, you guys watch that.
I'm glad that I watched it from the beginning because I could see what you mean. And I mean, what's one of the main episodes that you give as like a reference point to get people hooked on the show?
Oh, well, for me, that's the thing is I didn't watch it like from there. Because of that, I think I have like a good like gauging of what really is captivating, at least for me, maybe my age group. But I think my first full episode that was fully engaging to me, that I absolutely loved, oddly enough, I somehow ended up watching, and it's because of of how it was aired. With the Matt Smith era, BBC America was 100% readily available. It was like joint with Sci-Fi. It was always grouped together on channels, at least at the time. And they were doing what do they call? Marathoning, like where they would do like just full weekends, full days, full weeks of Doctor Who. And that's how I actually ended up getting into it, because I caught the Pandora, like that I think it was the 5 finale.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah, season 5 finale.
No,
it was that day.
Is it? Yeah, it was season 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. I think I walked in on a random episode that Mama had been watching, and I was like, whoa, okay. So I got into it, and then I was like, okay, well, now I'm intrigued. I need to watch this. So they were streaming the whole season, so I sat there and watched the full, literally over that day, spent the whole day watching season 5, and then I didn't realize it was the finale. So I had to, by the end of that, I was like, okay.
The Pandorica.
Yes, the Pandorica. So I was
I know, I'm just saying, it's crazy.
So I was like, okay, what's next? And then it was a finale, so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to go back now. Because I didn't realize it was the finale that I was watching for that season. And then so in between season 5 and 6, at some point, I believe all of Doctor Who was on Netflix at that time.
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that was, and that's the other thing. It's all about the timing, honestly, because again, 2010, you have it readily available to the world by streaming, by television network, and the internet. That's when everything sparks for the millennial age. Mm-hmm. So that's why there was this this huge spark. And I know a lot of it gets attributed to Matt Smith, like young dude, and even with David Tennant. I mean, to an extent, definitely, but it's also because
accessibility.
Exactly, it's because of the accessibility to the world, to the global audience. If you think about it, and I'm sure someone has put the numbers out there, but I'm 100% positive that there was a spike of a major increase in viewership across the globe at that time, that it was readily accessible to the world via streaming.
That was in about 2009 when and you said yes with the 11th Doctor, and that's because at that point BBC had extended its viewership, the viewership audience, and the way that it was bringing the show to a more global audience, right? And because of that, they were able to air the show with much greater largesse than they ever had before. You know what I'm saying?
And they got a larger budget, so it was able to attract a lot more of the millennial crowd. Because let's be real, a lot of the millennials, they don't appreciate the under budget as much as we that grew up with it as much. I mean, not that they don't, is not as easy.
Oh yeah, definitely. Which is why 9 got skipped a lot.
Yeah.
Because when you watch that first episode,
yeah.
Rose? When you watch the first episode, you're like, no. Okay, let's skip to the next season. See how it is by then. Okay, maybe a little bit, but yeah, I think it's definitely that's definitely a thing. Personally, I think I did not go back and watch it in order. I watched it on BBC America. I just watched however they aired it, because I just thought that was the chronological order that they were definitely in, and it was very much not so.
Definitely not.
Yeah, so about a year later, I went back and actually went through and watched everything, and I was like, okay. And I'm sure people will be not so happy to hear, but for me, the only episodes that I ever kind of got dulled with and maybe fell asleep and skipped forward a bit was, I believe, season 2 of the reboot with Rose and Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it dragged for me a bit. I don't know.
I could see that with some of the episodes.
Romance like bores me a bit.
Oh, she didn't want to watch it a lot because she felt like it was more of a romance story, what she was watching. And I was like, well, no, it really isn't. It wasn't something that was precedent set by the history of Doctor Who. It was something that was brought to Doctor Who with the reboot. That's what RTD did.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something I was used to. I didn't like it. I still don't like it, and you guys know that.
I actually enjoy some of those episodes. I liked I'll be the odd man out on this one. I actually liked the romance between Tennant and Rose. I actually enjoyed their chemistry together, and they had phenomenal chemistry, and just I thought that it kind of worked. But I see your point, and I agree with you to a certain extent that now seeing it in retrospective with the rest of Doctor Who as a backbone, it definitely isn't necessary, and it shouldn't have been added to it. And I see that perspective 100%. But again, when I first watched it, I enjoyed it, and I could see that.
Oh yeah, and most people love it.
And most people loved it, and that's why it had the strong cross-generational appeal that it did.
And also think of the timing when fandom booming with the internet and shipping, so people were absolutely in love and head over heels with Rose and Ten.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I mean, my personal thing isn't necessarily about just because romance can bore me a little bit. It was just like I love Billie Piper. I absolutely adore her, and I adore David Tennant. And I think their acting was really well done. They had good chemistry as actors. I just personally did not like the actual character of Rose, which is my personal opinion. I know people don't like Clara.
Not till later.
Well, no, it's not to say that I don't think that she's a strong, badass person with lots of amazing qualities. I just it's the same way people don't like Martha. I love Martha. I call Martha Badass Jones, but most people don't like her. It's just
I love Martha. A lot of people underappreciate her, and they don't give her the time of day.
Oh, they don't.
See, for most people label Martha as like a lovesick puppy and thought of her as leftovers and thought that she was pathetic and shouldn't and whined the whole time.
Person.
Well, that's the thing is
she did. She was a very smart woman.
Well, what's hilarious to me is what most people describe Martha as is what I view Rose as.
Yep.
She was the lovesick puppy
and she whined a lot.
That
she was
whined
very jealous.
Nonstop. Exactly.
Very jealous.
Extremely. Yes.
Yeah, because
but we love Billie, and in the long run, I did like Rose. I needed her to become.
I mean, it also bothered me that Rose was 19. Like, it always bothered me that Rose was 19.
19 or 20, yeah.
Yeah, riding the cradle much.
Yeah, because honestly, my first thought, like, literally, I said it out loud. I was like, isn't the Doctor, like, 900 years old?
Talk about extreme age gap.
And I mean, I get it. It's just, she was a kid. And I think that's what bothered me the most about it is that, like, I viewed her as, like, the other companions, I don't see any of them as, as an age. Rose is, to me, I can see she's a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah. And you could see that in the relationship with her and Mickey. And I agree with you. I agree a lot on that. I agree.
And then I will say I found myself going through Martha and then into Donna, and those were my favorite seasons. I loved Martha and I loved Donna. Martha was just this extreme. I never call Martha Jones. I call her Martha Badass Jones because she is. She's such badass. And then Donna destroyed me. Oh, Donna, I never expect. So
I think Donna and what do you call it? Her grandfather destroyed me. Between those two,
oh my god!
I completely died inside at the end of that season.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, I had watched at that point when I got around to season 4 with Donna. I had gotten through, I think season 6 may have started already, but I ended up finding my emotional attachment to Doctor Who through season 4.
Right.
Because once that season ended, I was just, nope, I wasn't having it. I hated everything. But
yep,
it made me feel like I fell in love with Donna Noble as a character, and she's to this day one of my favorite.
Actually, my niece and my nephew, who are a little bit older than Jyoti, started watching because I kind of recommended it to them, and they have become extremely strong, steadfast fans. Right? That would be Mandy and Jordan.
I think that's the most amazing part about being a Doctor Who fan is that you see all these people that are coming onto the show and enjoying the show as much as you. Like I said, when the librarian saw my face when I came back, and she's like, "Oh my God, yes, that wasn't it amazing?" And just that addition to the Doctor Who family, that's what adds to the frenzy of Doctor Who, and that's what adds to kind of the attachment that we get to it is bringing more fans on board, which I think it's unusual for a lot of fandoms because most fans want to be like elitist and they want to keep it to themselves. But Doctor Who is more like family. Let's add more people. Come on, bring it on. I think that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit. Which is
so it gave me an opportunity to be able to really showcase and highlight my absolute science nerd. And to show, because the kids at that time were 14, 15, 16. And we're talking about them being in a very formative stage in their life. So introducing them to Doctor Who with the reboot really gave an opportunity for them to be able to see how much I was passionate about something. Because I brought them all into the show, giving them the historic perspective of the Doctor from when I was seeing the Doctor, right? So I kind of got to get that full circle. It wasn't the first time I brought the children into a fandom, but it was certainly something I enjoyed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
yeah, because it was something that unanimously everyone didn't just get into like lightly. Like we were all actively, enthralled and along for the ride, because then, we started doing screenings together and calling each other and discussing every episode and getting each other like Doctor Who themed gifts. Like it became
and
a family
TARDISes.
thing. Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. It became a family thing. And you did ask earlier, and the way that we've at least what I recommend that has gotten everyone that I've ever recommended these episodes to into Doctor Who, I always recommend 2 episodes in particular, which would be, I know it's not called, oh gosh, what's the actual name of the episode? The Weeping Angels. Blink. There we go. I'm like, what? Yeah, it's keeping me. Blink and Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah.
By the way, the episode you hated, and you really couldn't.
I didn't say I hated it.
Okay, fine.
It was just weird.
The episode that was weird is Love and Monsters, and yes, they are doing something with it. Go ahead. Go back.
No.
So I do the same one. I do Blink, and then I actually do Silence in the Library, because it's an interesting one because you get River Song for the first time, and that gets a lot of people attached to it and kind of like, oh, what is this? It gets people asking more questions, so it kind of
I would just because it's like it brings you into a perspective of where even the Doctor doesn't know what's going on.
Exactly. And that's always fun. And then the reason I do Blink is because it's a standalone episode, and it really has nothing to do with the rest of the season, and you could watch it and it has nothing to do with the progression of the plot. And the same thing with the library, actually. If you think about it, you don't need any previous history to watch that episode and appreciate what's going on. And that's the cool part about those two. And then the fact that the library episode is a two-parter, it really catches people's attention because they want to watch the second part of that episode. So then it gets them watching more Doctor Who, and then more, and then more. It's the gateway drug.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's, yeah, it's so interesting because I actually never thought of that as an episode, but that completely works. I know one of the other ones people will use is Midnight.
Yes. Because it has that kind of like detective story kind of intrigue and kind of like a mystery feel.
Like out of those, it's funny, but out of everything that we've mentioned, Blink is essentially the lightest one because at least there's somewhat of a happy ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Doctor's barely in it, but yet he's all in it. I think Pandora episodes are great. I think I have never had any issue with asking people to go back and start with 9. I don't tell them to start with Rose. I tell them to start with the child. Oh God.
Yeah. The
Huh?
Empty Child.
Yeah. No, it's Empty Child. It's so sad. I just say it so. Because it's Jack gets introduced in that episode, and I feel like it gives you an extremely strong understanding of who the Doctor is in terms of the emotion and the emotional sway, and also the connection to humanity, because that's where there's some jealousy play going on there, and you also see his sadness and his regret. There's so much in that episode. So, and then you also have an episode where you're talking about an unwed teenage mother who had to hide, her child, and pretend her child was her brother. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was, what a controversial topic. So anyway, sorry, I digress, but you know what I'm saying. I think it's a great episode to introduce the Doctor.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so I think that we are.
I mean, that was great. That was quite a bit of insight into how each of us really got into Doctor Who and how we get other people into Doctor Who. Interesting to see. Yeah, but we all agree on those episodes, and I think most Whovians, pretty much agree on those episodes as, hey, you're gonna watch this, start with these. It's like showing a hand of cards,
Definitely.
Okie dokie. Well, any closing thoughts? Anything else anyone wanted to add?
No, I think we said it all. I think we laid it all out there.
Okay. I hope everyone was good with this episode. I know it wasn't our usual angsty, boisterous episode because we're being a little more reflective, but it's good. It's good to understand where we came from and why we love this show so much. I don't even, I'm just really happy.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a nice way to introduce since we've pretty much gone over most of the stuff for season 11, we're going to be changing up the series a little bit in the future. And this is a nice way to introduce it, why we enjoy Doctor Who, how we got into it, and why we're really doing this type of show, because we love it. And this is the reason we love it. I think we each explained how we got into it and why we enjoy it so much.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you. And you know where to find us. I mean, we always say it anyway, but we'll say one more time. For Diversely Geek, you can find us on all the social medias. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, and all the podcast sites as well. You can even find us on Spotify. I know you streamers out there would love that. And for Man Bites Media?
You could check us out on pretty much all the main podcast sites. There's about 36 sites we're on now, podcast-wise. And YouTube, you're able to check out our content. And, of course, Narcotic Casserole, which is basically the YouTube channel leg of Man Bites Media. So if you want to check out any of their content, they keep update with the most modern movies and all that stuff that are coming out, and some pretty fantastic theatrical stuff that's coming out. So it's fun time for all. And definitely check out our other podcast, Man Bites Film and Man Bites Retro.
Yeah, definitely. And with Diverse Geek discusses, and quite a few different series that you can check out. Honestly, YouTube's best way to follow everything, as well as on the podcast sites as well. So that's it for this week. Again, thank you for joining us.
All right. Good night from Nisha. I'm your geek mom. And thanks for joining us this week.
Have a good night.
Good night.